Here is Flash, and I reared Flash because she came from a dairy herd, and so she's my pet, and she's very clever actually. This cow, she loves apples, and she will always tell me when she's out in the fields in the summer, she will always come up and tell me where the apples are, and get me to scale over the fences to go and get them for her. So she's very good, but she's also very demanding, aren't you, Flash? Yeah.
Hello everybody, I'm here today with Liz Webster of Save British Farming at her farm. So it's very lovely to get out and about and meet all of the dogs that you will hopefully see wandering around in the video. Liz is one of the people behind the protests in London that we've covered over recent weeks, and she's a member of Save British Farming, founder of Save British Farming.
Hello, thank you for asking me on, Ollie. Yes, my name is Liz Webster, and I founded Save British Farming, about 5 years ago now, to try and save British farming, and we're still trying to save British farming.
You are one of the organisers of the protests that have been happening at the moment. Would you like to talk a bit about the protests that are happening all over the country? Because there are protests everywhere, and I feel they are not getting the broadcast coverage they deserve.
Yeah, I mean, what we did initially before we launched Save British Farming, we were called Farmers for a People's Vote. And I pitched to a People's Vote campaign because I was frustrated that they weren't talking about food and farming, and that the Brexiteers had commandeered the stage on that. So we did this event. We took sheep to London, and it was a big day. And this was in, I think, August, September time, 2019. And then we had COVID. And we wanted to continue to protest. The American trade deal was on the table. And so how did we do that when everybody was half locked down and there were strict protest laws? So I said, let's do these tractor rallies, because everybody is not, touching each other, and we can drive. And London was dead, so we took tractors to London then, and that's how the format began. And what we wanted was tractor rallies to break out everywhere in Conservative constituents to try and get them to not do the American trade deal. And we won. They didn't do the American trade deal. Yeah. The Conservatives didn't. And now we're at the point where we've got the American trade deal back on our laps again, and it's great because we've got farmers are really now wanting to do more, and these tractor rallies are really working. But they're not protests, are they? They're carnivores, really, but they're both, but they're positive campaigning, and more farmers are doing more of them all over the country. Whenever you drive a tractor in these events, it brings you to tears, because
it does.
Everybody waves at you, and it really is bringing the countryside into the cities and towns. The message is not about us poor farmers. That doesn't work. The message is, what about your food? Because if we don't feed you, and you might not like us as farmers, but if we don't feed you, you're going to be fed by the Americans and the Brazilians and the Australians, and they have a very, very different culture around farming. They farm in a very, very different way, and you'll never be able to influence how your food is produced and what goes into it. And you'll end up also paying more for food, which comes from further away, causes more Amazon clearance, more animal cruelty, and actually very bad for public health as well. And then if there are climate events and war in the world, why would countries be coming sort of say, oh, we must send all of our food over to this little island in the Northern Hemisphere who gave up producing food? They're not going to feel sorry for us, guys, and we're going to be in a very bad situation. So from a food security point of view, every person in this country should be more concerned about that, because you don't need to nuke a country if you can starve it. And that's why food security is national security.
Yes, I invite comment from America and Brazil. I often get very good comments from those places. Do tell us what you think, obviously being on the other side of this. Would be very interesting to read.
These are Pedigree South Devons. Yeah. And then this bull, he's a Slur And we cross them now. We cross the South Devons with this bull because the calves are a little bit more lively and they don't have so many, because the South Devons are very placid. Big cows, traditional, historic English herd, but they're very, very placid when they're born, the calves. So often there's problems with them when they're first born. They're not energetic enough. Secondly, they're very big. Their heads are very big. So with the Soler, we're finding it's a better mix, and the calves are stronger.
So I've collected some clips that we'll look at and discuss. Most of it is stuff that has happened in recent weeks but hasn't been getting the media attention that I think it deserves. So to start with, we're going to have a look at a clip of some farmers in London after the last protest, which some of you may have seen.
Can't get through because of the tractors. The ambulance is trying to get through here. Got its blue lights on, blocking the whole of the left lane, obviously. Now they're moving because the green light's gone, but still quite a backlog there. There we go. Taxi on the other side of the road. Okay.
I think that was a bit of a non-story, really. What did you make of that?
I think that's a clip of fake news, and it shows what they actually do. They get a very short clip and it makes it look different to actually what happened. The bus broke down, there was a lot of traffic. Yes, of course, there were tractors there, they were on their way back, but the lights in front were red and there was no blockage, no one was held up, and it was just a fake news story to cause outrage and feed the culture war.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that I thought was weird about it, is that there was this comparison drawn with Just Stop Oil.
Yeah.
And this Just Stop Oil had blocked roads and had gotten in trouble for it, and people were saying that farmers were blocking the roads and we were not being treated in the same way by the media, and that was unfair.
The difference is we had permission to do our protest or rally around a route, and when everybody left, we left in accordance with the police. They told us how many should go out at every time. The police had also notified all of the traffic, the ambulances, everything else, that it would be busy on these routes because they knew what was going to be going on. And Just Stop Oil actually went out of their way to block roads without permission, and that is a totally different thing to holding a legal protest.
Yeah, and the police loved it. I didn't put this on the in the video because I thought
They
it might
thanked us.
look strange, but the police thought that we were really polite and orderly, and I think that we gave them a very positive impression. They were really pleased with it.
Yes, they did.
Conveniently, as I was collecting the clips, I got a comment that I thought would be worth discussing. It asks why we are objecting to the inheritance tax. Didn't most of you vote for Brexit? The money from the EU's common agricultural policy doesn't seem to be shabby anymore. I thought it would be interesting to discuss this with Liz Webster, as you are principally an anti-Brexit campaigner.
Yeah, actually, on this farm, we produced the biggest ever anti-Brexit message ever, was led by donkeys in 2019.
Wow, yeah.
It's actually untrue that all farmers voted Brexit. We've proved it time and time again. There's been research done at Harper Adams University. They've gone through and broken down the farming vote as much as they can. Given the average age of farmers is over 60 and that most are male, in fact the vote in the farming community was a lot lower than the national vote share, because 55% of men voted Brexit and 49% of women voted Brexit, and the older they were, the more likely they were to back Brexit. So if you put all of those men into the pot, it basically, on a national level, it worked out about 53% of farmers from this research voted Brexit, and that's lower than the national average for men, as I said, they're mostly men. Farmers Weekly have done various research, and it shows that 80% of farmers now accept that Brexit is a disaster. So nobody voted for what we've got, or not many people voted for what we've got. Out of the farming community, we can say a large majority now realise that it's not what they wanted. And the same in the fishing community. Some of them might say there's a better Brexit out there, and that's the most ludicrous thing, because there isn't a better Brexit. the thought that Brexit might not be finished is because we haven't done the America trade deal. America trade deal for British farming is cataclysmic because America subsidises agriculture very, very heavily. It's got very low regulations, so they've got very low standards, very intensive farming, and they've got a lot of area, a lot of land, and a better climate in much of America. And so we will never be able to compete with them. And in fact, we can prove that because we did try and compete with them after the repeal of the Corn Laws, and we had an agricultural depression which led to World War I and World War II, where we nearly starved.
There we go, tying Brexit into history, which is my area. As the generation that is going to be affected by the inheritance tax changes, I can say that I didn't vote for Brexit because when the referendum happened, I was a child. Right? We will discuss Brexit in great detail on the channel and hopefully with Liz's expertise.
I love talking about Brexit.
Why?
Of course I hate Brexit and I hate what it's done, but the historical realities of what has gone on has undermined parliamentary sovereignty. It's ensured a corrupt government, and we saw this happen in Germany in the 1920s and 30s. We're the only remaining country, I think, we were the only remaining country in the EU that had first past the post. After the war, we told Germany, we can't trust you with first past the post. You've got to change how you work so we don't get war again. But we entrusted ourselves to continue with a system which we know can be hijacked by the far left and the far right working together. And that is exactly where we are.
Yeah.
There's Harold looking at us.
Harold the Bull.
He's so dopey, that one. He's very sweet.
So this is a clip of the National Farmers Union President Tom Bradshaw speaking to a parliamentary committee on the day we were all in London with the big people protest.
One of the things that's been very clear, especially when we took evidence from with the Northern Ireland Select Committee yesterday, that this is having a huge impact on the well-being of our agricultural communities. I was just wondering what measures you have noticed. What have you noticed about the concerns of farmers and the increase in the concerns? Is it impacting on their mental health, Tom?
I mean, it's very clear. The examples that I'm being sent through are often from what I would say middle-aged farmers concerned about their parents or parent that doesn't believe they have 7 years able to plan, and the awful, unacceptable position that those individuals have been put in. Because somebody said earlier on they haven't taken advice. That's completely wrong. A lot of these people have spent the very best money on tax planning advice, and until the Chancellor sat down, the correct advice was to keep the farm until death. Now they don't have any way to plan through that, and yet they've given everything to producing the food for this country in that period post-Second World War. They really deserve a lot more respect than they have been given by the changes that are proposed. And I am going to talk about the most severe human impacts, which we believe could end up being triggered by this, which is that those people who genuinely are either in ill health or don't believe that they are going to be able to live for 7 years may well decide that they shouldn't be here on April 26th. Now, no policy should ever be published that has that unintended side effect. Now, what I'm being told by some people is, well, money doesn't trigger this. And I may agree with them that money doesn't trigger it, but it's not money. This is a lifetime of work. It's the heritage. And the custodianship of that farm.
So that is some pretty powerful stuff. That did get picked up by the mainstream media, the fact that you had a grown man almost in tears talking to a parliamentary committee. What did you make of it?
It is really distressing because the cliff edge that has been put in front of the farming community is immense, and it's a humanitarian crisis. Most people might not recognise this, but farmers are conditioned to recognise that the farm comes first. The farm comes before anything. And that means a lot of the elderly amongst us in the farming community will see this cliff edge in April 2026 and think, well, I'm 80-something, I don't want my family to be burdened with a big debt, so I might as well preempt my end. And it is, if this isn't changed, it is absolutely certain there will be thousands of suicides before April 2026. And that is why Tom is crying. I know older farmers myself in this multi-generational farmers who I know are on that list. And that's why I give my absolute pledge to farmers that I will do everything I can to stop this happening, because I feel as if we are all morally responsible to do everything we can to stop this tragedy. It's absolutely disgraceful that we should be in this situation. The government really need to move on this, and it's hard to talk about because in talking about it there's a worry that it might encourage some farmers to even think about it. But we all know from the farming community, we all know that that's exactly what they're thinking.
For old farmers, their whole life will have been spent working, often for very little financial reward, often no holidays at all, depending on the type of farming they do. And that will all have been done to pass it on to the next generation. And if you're someone in the 70s, 80s, they probably have stepped back from doing the work, but their name might still be on the deed. So they've been put in a situation now where they have retired materially, but now they have an additional responsibility, which is if they want to make their life's work that they have already done account for something, they have to make sure that they're not still here in April 2026, which is just absurd that the government would put.
It's inhuman.
So with that in mind, the fact that there is a rational case for people to commit suicide, which I emphasise nobody should do, this is being fought against, hold on. Yesterday at the time of filming, in the Commons, a real life case of someone taking their own life was brought to the Minister who is in charge of agriculture, and this is what he had to say.
In recent weeks, a farmer took himself off to a remote part of his farm and killed himself. The message he left his family, who wished to remain anonymous, is that he did this because he feared becoming a financial burden to his family because of changes to inheritance tax. This is the human cost of the figures that the Secretary of State provides so casually. What does the Secretary of State say to that grieving family?
Secretary of State.
I extend my heartfelt sympathies to that family, but I think it is irresponsible in the extreme to seek to weaponise a personal tragedy of that kind in this way. Where there is mental ill health, then there needs to be support for that, and this government is investing in it. She knows from the last year for which data is available that the vast majority of claimants will pay absolutely nothing following the changes to APR.
Victoria Atkins.
How heartless, and also how extraordinary that the Secretary of State is more discomforted by being presented with the facts of the consequences of his policy than the reality of what this policy ensures. I can say, Mr. Speaker, I was a minister for 7.5 years. I've never, ever seen a policy have the consequences that this one has. We know that there is a tragically high suicide rate amongst the farming community. The NFU gave evidence about this. The Secretary of State has been told repeatedly. Will he collect data on a monthly basis of suicides from farmers, farming families, landowners and family businesses so that we, the House and the outside community, can understand the human costs of this tax policy before it comes into force?
So
mental health services are the responsibility of the National Health Service. and the former health secretary who broke the NHS is in no position to lecture anybody about public services. She was no friend of the health services, no friend of the mental health services, and she is no friend of farming. 12,000 farms went bust on their watch. They failed to get £300,000 out of the doors and into the pockets and bank accounts of farmers, and they signed a trade deal with Australia that undercut British farmers on environmental and welfare standards. I hear the posturing. It is this government that is standing up for farming.
Well, it's the Punch and Judy between, they've passed on the management in recent times, and he's trying to blame her for other things that they did, but he's also not taking responsibility for the decision on this inheritance tax, which is built on erroneous numbers. And even their own Labour member, who is a tax expert, now concedes this. So he's defending the indefensible, but he's also insulting the farming community by saying that if someone commits suicide, they've got mental health problems, because he doesn't want to be culpable for the decision that they've made, and that's deeply insulting.
I think the thing that it shows is that he has no conception of how farmers exist. As we just talked about, it's rational to take your own life in some situations, which the government should be very conscious of, and the government should never put its own citizens in that situation. But here he is saying that it's a mental health problem and not his responsibility, which, whether or not he believes, is something that he should resign, surely. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting.
Well, I don't think he should have ever have been in this. He's proved himself. From the moment he was actually appointed, I was concerned, because he's from, he's obviously he's a townie. He's very urban. He's got no connection to the rural communities whatsoever. So he just keeps proving time and time again that he is unfit to do this job. And Steve Reed should resign, and I hope he does.
But I thought it was very strange that the media didn't really pick up on that in the way that I think they should have done. They did pick up on something else he said, which was this.
I welcome the Labour government's new deal for farmers and the 25-year roadmap to making farming profitable again. Can I seek assurance from the Secretary of State that Calder Valley farmers will get their fair share in this new deal?
He will be aware, as I am, that the Shadow Secretary of State, as well as the former Prime Minister, keep telling farmers they're not in it for the money. We know that they are. They're businesses that need to make a profit.
So everyone picked up on that, because he said that farmers are not in it for the money. He's suggesting that we are greedy. I think actually that that's a little bit unfair, because I think while he should not have said that, and I think the fact that he did say that shows that he doesn't understand our existence, it wasn't really what he meant. What he meant to say was farmers deserve to make a reasonable living, which is something I think is agreeable.
Of course, nobody wants to work really hard and not have enough money to live. A lot of farmers have to have a second job to keep their farms going, or they have to diversify in some ways. But the only option that Steve Reed is talking to me, that the only thing I hear is that if I want to increase money and income on this farm, my only option is either to intensify or do a solar farm or sell for housing. He's not offering us anything else. That is the only way that we can, because we're not getting any support for food production, and in fact they've removed it faster than the previous government said they would. So I don't know why he's saying what he said, but it doesn't make it. I actually think Steve Reed doesn't really want to be DEFRA Secretary. We all know that in Westminster, DEFRA Secretary is the worst job, and they all try and get rid of it as quickly as possible. He's sucking up to the Chancellor, and he's doing whatever they say, and he's actually just talking rubbish, and he's insulting the farmers and the rural communities. And I've said it before, I'm going to say it again, he should resign. He's unfit for office.
It points to so many of the broader problems in politics. I mean, you see in the question that was asked to him by a friendly MP, he supports the New Deal for farming, the 25-year plan. We don't know what these things are. Again,
we talk about Steve Reed being unfit for office. In my view, Rachel Reeves may well not be in post for too much longer. She's upset a lot of people. The farmers are more loud at the moment, but a lot of businesses are unhappy as well. And So I think what we're seeing, or what I'm seeing, is a split where I think Keir Starmer is trying to save his own post and sidestep away from Rachel Reeves and hope that only she gets thrown under the bus. But I do think things are moving, and I think we've played a good game in making sure we've done some positive campaigning, but nothing is going to happen before the spring. And so from our perspective, from campaigning, I think we should just keep positive campaigning. If we don't get change in the spring, then we perhaps need to change tack. But from what I've seen, particularly in the last week, and because the Treasury figures are wrong, you can't keep defending something that's wrong, then it's an untenable position and they're going to have to move. And politically, every time there is a fatality, and there will be many, then it's going to be pinned on Rachel Reeves and Steve Reed and Keir Starmer. So you can then really understand why they do have to move on this. I have faith that there are a number of really good Labour MPs. Emily Thornberry is one great MP. Stella Creasy is another.
Well, I think Yvette Cooper is quite competent.
She's competent, but at the moment she's a little bit too right-wing in terms of immigration for me personally as a Liberal. But I think that there are good MPs in there who are intelligent and can add up and realise that they can't keep getting away with behaving worse than the last Tory administration.
Do you think they're worse?
I think this is worse because we've never had a situation before where the Treasury is holding hands with the politicians and being dishonest, and that frightens me. This is really scary.
Rachel Reeves' husband is the Chief Operating Officer, I believe, at DEFRA, which is the Rural Ministry, which begs this question as to whether it's ignorance or maliciousness that is causing these screw-ups, because I find it hard to believe that someone that high up in DEFRA would not have at least a basic understanding of the economics of agriculture, of the value of the asset versus the income. And I also fail to believe that this would not be discussed over tea
on Pillow Talk.
On Pillow Talk, if it was making national news every day.
There is this book called The Good Chaps, because the politicians that came through after the war were the good chaps because they'd experienced such a disaster in the Second World War, and they came back from war and decided to govern better, and we need that to happen again. But I don't think we will get to that without changing the voting system to from first past the post to proportional representation. That is the cure for the badness that we've got now. But interestingly, with so many small parties coming up, we are going towards proportional representation in terms of the number of parties. But then there's this trap where we've got a government that was elected on 34% of the vote. The next election, it might be even lower because it's going to be a massive lottery. You might get seats won with 17% of the vote. That's scary.
Would you be part of an agrarian workers' party under proportional representation?
I don't know if I'm very good at communicating, but I'm not good at being told what to say, and I would be rebellious.
Yeah, but you could be the person who tells people what to say, I think.
Well, I like people being themselves, and I like things happening organically and naturally, and I don't like liars and lying. I can't lie. If I lie, I go absolutely bright red. And so I don't know if I'm fit. I don't know if I'm suitable to be a politician. I have tried, and I wasn't very good at it. So I'm better off at commenting about it, or perhaps helping with formulating policy in the background or communication somehow. But I think that having a rural party, a farming party, would be really, really good. It can't just be about farming, because the rural communities need to all be involved in that, to make sure that we hold on to what we have got, which is our history. If we get rid of our rural communities, we will become like Singapore, which is just a concrete jungle, and there will be no history.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be a shame to lose that. One of the things as well that I think is of broader significance here is that while this has become a culture war issue, you have people like Dale Vince tweeting things, having a go at us, a public figure behaving the same age that he dresses. The point is that the Labour Party are not governing this sector well. And if you have no sympathy for us at all, it's still worrying because they will be governing other sectors in a similar way, surely, and that will affect more people.
They keep telling us to prepare for war. Some people are actually saying that we're already in World War III. And the main component of a war, and I did refer to it earlier, the main component is food. So to actually be running down our food security means actually it's traitorous in my book, because we're an island with a large population. Not having enough food is really frightening. So Daisy is head cow that we bought. She was one of the first South Devons that we bought. We bought her down in Exeter, and she was halter trained by her original owner. And so she's always been the bossiest cow. She's what we call a head cow. She often has trouble with calving and calves because she spends so much time bossing everyone around that she's stressed. So she's lost a couple of calves just from her responsibilities of being head cow, isn't it? But she's always been a really friendly cow. But you can see now she's looking around, she's watching what everyone's up to, and she bosses people around. If she wanted to go and eat the hay now, she'd push them all out the way and say, I'm head cow, I eat first.
So I think we'll leave it there. I would like to thank Liz Webster for coming on the channel. She is a very important figure in the farming community at the moment. We've talked about this. There are not many historically significant farmers. Rex Patterson is perhaps the only one, besides Liz Webster. So it has been a pleasure. It has been a pleasure to speak to her and allow her to share her views on the channel. I hope you guys all found that very interesting.
Thanks very much for asking me on. And yes, I feel embarrassed about that. I don't like the
No.
there's loads of important people. I'm just good at being chopsy.
Do check out Liz's channel. She talks about the impact of Brexit and contemporary politics on farming more than we do at the moment, so very much worth checking out. Hopefully we'll come back here in time to see how things are getting on, and also hopefully we'll do more videos like this where we get out and about and talk to people who are doing interesting stuff about the things they are doing. So it has been an absolute treat, and I hope you at home enjoyed it. I'm getting a hug.
Come on then, good girl. Come on, baby. And hello. Wait.